masterpiece. Just take a second and let that sink in, what that must really mean to an artist. Imagine growing up just fully enamored with an artistic medium, finding master artist after master artist and telling yourself, I want to be just like them. I want to create these powerful moments. I want to display these complex emotions. I want to show the parts of the human experience that can only be shown and not told. And then imagine after making the incredibly difficult choice to be a professional artist, having to spend years and years dealing with deadlines and the all too often lack of artistic integrity involved in the never-ending hill that is commercial work. And then finally, after you have made a name for yourself, you know that you have job security, you can finally pour yourself into one work of art, use every single tool and trick that you've accumulated over the years, and create the full culmination of your artistic potential. Imagine how fulfilling that must be. And I think that this comic is that piece of work for David Finch. Howdy, I'm Kurt Williams, and today we're looking at issue 1 of Skinbreaker by Robert Kirkman and David Finch. What an absolute masterpiece this is. Listen, I am immediately stoked about any comic series that has David Finch drawing it, because David Finch is one of the greatest comic artists of all time. That's not an opinion, that is a fact, and I'm absolutely willing to come to blows over this. And of course, I'm not biased at all, considering that David Finch is the #1 artist whose style I tried to emulate when I was just a young artistic goober. And if you don't know what makes David Finch's art so amazing, prepare to have your mind blown. Now, of course, we all know who Robert Kirkman is. He's that guy who wrote Walking Dead and Invincible and Battle Pope and Oblivion Song and Void Rivals. He's an industry giant who can do no wrong, and this is actually one of my favorite books by him because it just goes really slowly. It's incredibly simple and emotional, and that is exactly what I like. I've said so many times on this channel that I would rather read a super simple story that's very well told than a very complicated, expansive, interesting story that's just kind of meh. And Kirkman mentions at the end of this issue that the idea was to be very simple, to have a very simple plot that is just emotional gut punch after gut punch, and just leave tons of room for the art to breathe. And speaking of letting the art breathe, let's finally open up the book so you can see this absolutely ridiculous opening splash page with not a single word, just tons and tons of detail and world building and texture. It is astonishing how David Finch can put so much effort into detail and still have such strong composition in his panels. It doesn't feel like it's just getting washed out with overdone details. There's form and depth and simplicity in the complexity. You can look at this page from 10 feet away and understand it. You can also look at this page from 3 feet away and see more details but still understand it. You can look at this page from 2 inches away and you will find something new and awesome in there. And then if that wasn't enough, you turn the page and you immediately get this gorgeous double page spread full of detail and sound and color. I mean, really, you can hear this jungle. You can feel the air on your skin. One of the reasons this book is such a showcase of David Finch's work is because he drew it on twice as much space as most comic artists do. Every single page of art was really 2 pages worth of drawing. So this 2-page spread is actually 4 pages worth of comic drawing. And man, you can tell. I mean, there is no shortcut taken here. Look how many layers this background has. We have the guy up front, then the tree behind him, then the trees behind that, then the leaves behind that. There are so many artists out there who either don't have the vision, or they don't have the time or the tools to achieve that vision. David Finch has always gone above and beyond and knocked it out of the park in every single issue I've ever read of his. But this is next level. Just look at this panel of the 2 characters running through the jungle. I mean, really, the sense of motion, the sense of shape and form, the detail in those huge leaves and whatever is growing on that tree, and these cute little iguana squirrel things that are jumping around. We've got a little anemone thing growing over there, and you could imagine animals crawling around inside these holes in these intertwined, super intricate tree roots. And listen, don't even get me started on David Finch's forearm. Holy smokes, that guy loves drawing forearms. I think there might not be anybody else on this planet who is as familiar with the muscular anatomy of a forearm as David Finch. And then, oh man, you turn the page and you get another double page spread. Just look at that. Oh man, that is gorgeous. The detail here. Look at these clouds. Look at these clouds in the background. Immediately I'm reminded of Bilquis Evely because it has that sense of fragility to it. Those very careful, slender contour lines in the clouds. The imperfections of each little billow of the clouds adding to the organic sense of it. Something that I also see in Quesada's work, which I love. And then even up here in the top corner, you get these little dashes which look a little bit like something Walter Simonson might do. And that's just the clouds. How about these super intricate, super detailed leaves all over the place? How about these symbols carved into the axe this guy is holding? How about the individual grains of these wooden shin guards that this dude is wearing on his way to a frickin' Aztec soccer game? How about these Louisiana bayou looking tree roots down here? Man, that is complex and beautiful. Even the goopy whatever that is that's dripping off these big old tree branches and the veins in the wood of these trees. Never mind the incredibly convincing anatomy of this creepy alien dog bear thing. I mean, it's one thing to imagine an alien beast, but how about to give it this much detail? This much consistency in imaginary anatomy? It's insane. One thing that I think is really interesting about this page overall is that there's a lot of motion happening here, but we don't have the typical motion lines that you normally see in a comic. It's more like you took a picture on sport mode, right? You just have this freeze frame of the action, which I think makes it feel even more cinematic. Though I noticed that there's just a little bit of motion lines down there on one of this beast's feet. And I think that's a really interesting choice. I don't know why he chose to do that. I feel like it would have been fine without that. Anyway, if I spend this much time going over every single piece of amazing artwork in this book, we'll be here all day. The basic gist of this story is that we're following this tribe, and this tribe has a chief who's getting pretty old and it's probably time for him to be replaced. This is one of those tribes where might makes right, or at least might makes I'm in charge. So if the chief ain't kicking butt anymore, then it's time for somebody else to challenge him and take that throne. This chief knows he's done for. He wants someone to replace him who's responsible and wise, and he really wants this guy to take over for him. This guy being maybe the chief's son. It's never really outright said that he's his son. Either way, he's a shard bearer. And we'll get into the shard more later. The younger guy does not want to challenge because that pretty obviously means he's gonna have to kill this guy. So he's been putting it off and putting it off, while meanwhile this other big bully looking dude is getting pretty irritated that their chief is obviously not kicking anymore. So our boy is constantly trying to protect the chief and make sure people think that he's still got his mojo, while also fighting off these bigger dudes who just want to take control. After we see a little bit of that, we move into the actual village, and I know that I was talking about the plot, but can we just look at this art really quick? Oh man, this art is amazing. Look at this immaculately detailed village. These people have these like houses drilled into the sides of this mountain. They've got all these, I don't know, vaguely South American looking super cool statues. It's almost like ruins just on the cusp of becoming ruins. They feel old and ominous and powerful. Not to mention the smoke. Oh man, I love it when David Finch draws smoke. This smoke is even cooler than the smoke on the page a few pages ago. I just love the way it bubbles and billows and like runs across the sky like a river. Around this time we find out why the comic is called Skinbreaker. It turns out that these humanoid alien creature things are actually born without skin, and then it's not until they go outside and the shard that they carry around shines the sun on them when their skin breaks. So our main guy has a son whose skin has not broken yet, even though he is long past the point when it should have broken. And the son feels ashamed of this because of the culture he's grown up in, but his dad is fortunately a real chill guy who doesn't care and still supports his son no matter what. But at the next skin breaking ceremony, our chief guy raises his shard over his head and shines his light on our favorite little fleshy boy, and even though he should have broken his skin by now, it just won't break. Which just further irritates Big Thuggy Boy, who wants to take over because he just wants to see super tough kids. So he volunteers his own absolute baby child to go and have his skin broken, even though it's way before the time he's supposed to. And surprisingly, the baby's skin does break, which is nuts, and apparently goes to prove how tough this kid is. And then, riding off the vibes of that victory, this dude is set to challenge the chief so that he can take over, when of course, our boy steps in and challenges him first. Plot-wise, not a whole ton has happened in this first issue, but we have learned a whole lot about what's going on here, and of course we've had page after page of beautiful art from David Finch. And I'm not complaining about the plot. I love this pacing. I love that we have this much time to sit with all of these emotions. I think this is one of those timeless tales that people just keep dressing up with different settings and characters, but it's always the same story, which makes it kind of sound like I'm saying this comic is cliche, which I'm not, because I have faith in Robert Kirkman because he did a cliche zombie story and it was a zombie story to end all zombie stories. And then he did a superhero story that was the superhero story to end all superhero stories. So sure, dude, take one of those timeless tales and put your own spin on it and watch it blow the frick up. I'll spend all my money on it! This comic is what great comics look like in a market that is so oversaturated with amateur work and super speedy, super lame comics. This is what you should be spending your money on. And if you can get the Treasury Edition, you frickin' better. I wish I had known there was a Treasury Edition. I didn't see it in my local shop, but I frickin' need it. 10 out of 10. I said it, I meant it. It's amazing. Go buy it. Alright, listen, it's a bad day for people who don't like me because you're about to see my face a lot more. I'm gonna be pumping out the videos, alright? They're coming. They're coming your way. I got a lot of things to say and I'm gonna be really sad if you don't want to listen to me say them. So stay tuned. Until next time, I'm Kurt Williams and you are somebody else.